to go live here real quick on a Wednesday night. Um, I think it's probably somewhere around like 11, probably getting close to midnight on the East Coast. So a lot of the East Coast viewers are probably in bed right now or getting ready to go to bed. And if you're on the West Coast, then it's only 8:52, so a lot of the West Coast folks are probably still awake. But I wanted to get on here and have a quick discussion about retro video game values, meaning the prices, the monetary value of retro games in 2026, and if it still matters to collectors. Or I guess the better question is probably, should it matter? Should retro video game values matter? Or should we just be collecting and regardless of the price? And I think that conversation could go either way, but I do want to talk about the value of retro games and kind of, I think, how important it is to collectors in 2026. I also want to talk a little bit too about selling off my old collection, why I sold it off. Um, I'm still getting comments from people who, commented back when I first sold it off. Like, I just don't understand. I just don't understand. I just don't understand. Y2K, why'd you sell it off? I just don't understand. And man, I feel like I've explained it so many times, but um, I guess I'll give a brief explanation again as to why I sold, um, the benefits of selling, and probably the things I regret from selling. So we'll talk about that. So we definitely want to talk about video game values. We'll also talk about really quickly why I sold. Easy, what's up going on? I mean, what's up going on? What's up Y2K? Value will go up on retro, but the comments won't be able to find it. But the commons rather won't be able to find it as easy anymore, which has been happening for years. Current gen, though, nobody's paying attention. This is true. This is true, easy. So I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about the values. Should they still matter for retro video games? Do they matter? Are they still a big consideration for folks who are, looking to get into the hobby? So I want to talk about that. I also want to talk about why I sold my collection, my old collection, my East Coast collection. Still getting comments and questions on why I sold that collection. So we'll talk about that. Those are the two main things I want to talk about. But first, before we get into those two topics, I did want to share with you that I somehow miraculously found this Game Boy Micro at, again, a GameStop. Now, the biggest thing about this thing is that it is like, this live isn't going to do it justice, but this thing is clean. This is one of the cleanest Game Boy Micros I've seen since like the Game Boy Micro I got like back in the day. So this is actually a very great find. This is definitely staying in the collection. Super glad to have this. All right, let's dive into it. Let's first talk about, do retro video game values still matter? Should they still matter? And then I'm gonna dive into why I sold my old collection. So I feel like there's two paths when we talk about the value of retro video games, and there's two notions I feel like people kind of have this conversation around. So there's the perspective of someone who is more of a gamer versus a collector, and vice versa, right? I think that to collectors, right, to people who buy video games knowing that they probably won't play all of the games, they'll probably play some of the games, but not all of them. I think to those people, value definitely matters because it's like anything else. It's like watches, it's like, you know, it's, any other type of collectible. If you certain comic books, when you buy certain comic books, you're not going to read them all, but you definitely want to have them. This thing is loud. Let me turn this down. But you definitely will collect them. You're not always going to read all the comics, but you want to have them in your collection. So I think for folks who are collectors, you're definitely that's going to matter to you. But if you're someone who's a gamer and you're playing the video game, and you're more focused on the gameplay, the fun of it, and stuff like that, then I don't think value and price matters to you as much. And when they run out of selling to each other, they'll go after my stuff, and that's funny. So I think retro game values really matter to collectors more than gamers. I think if you're someone who enjoys playing retro games, then you're probably the same type of person who's emulating. You're the same type of person who's, probably buying like the mini consoles. And, you're going to buy, people who are more gamer focused, they're typically going to go after probably some of the more very popular common titles, just because they're not going to see the value in spending a lot of money on a really expensive, obscure game. Like a person who wants to play Metal Warriors, for example, for the Super Nintendo, they're going to emulate that. They're really not going to go out and spend $500 on a loose cart to play Metal Warriors or Hagane or any other type of game like that. But I think to someone who's a retro video game collector, yeah, I think that the value definitely matters, especially when you're building your collection, and especially when you have a large collection, because at the end of the day, there is a market for these games. There's a market for these items, and the market fluctuates. It goes up and it goes down. You have seasons where there are more people willing to buy, and seasons where there are more people willing to spend. And I think it's those seasons that ultimately determine, where the market sits. I saw a comment earlier today that said that now is a horrible time to sell. And I kind of have to disagree. Um, you can sell, your games at any time, and have a bad experience or do a bad deal. You could have sold your retro video games during the peak of the pandemic when people were paying exorbitant prices for games. But if you sold to the wrong person, or you just didn't, negotiate a good deal for yourself, then it was a bad deal. Or vice versa. You could have a really great collection and want to sell now and find a buyer who's willing to pay you price charting prices for your games. I think it just depends on what you're selling. And this is going to kind of lead me into the conversation as to why I sold my collection, because a lot of people still ask me, like, well, Y2K, you had so much good stuff. Why did you sell your collection? Well, let's break down my collection, right? In my collection, back when I had my collection of video games, I probably had maybe 1,300 video games in my old collection. At one point, it was getting way up there. And I think I was getting close to like 2,000 games. And I was like, all right, this is way too much. And so I started to really sell in bulk before I did the final sell off. Because what a lot of people don't realize is that I was selling off massive chunks of my collection for the entire year. But usually, whenever I did a video or whenever I shot a video on my YouTube channel, you guys typically saw the same like 4 to 5 shelves of games, which were typically like my Sega Saturn games, my Dreamcast games, my PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, maybe some GameCube. So most viewers were seeing like the games that I really cared about. Now, in my collection, I would say that of the 1,300 games in my collection, the bulk of the value of my entire collection of the 1,300 games were probably captured in maybe about 300 to 350 games, meaning that 300 to 350 of those games were accounted for half of the overall value of my collection. That's how valuable some of those games were. And we're talking about complete in box Neo Geo games, complete in box Super Nintendo games. You guys saw it, so I don't need to go back through it. I mean, if you want to know what my collection looked like, just go back in some of my videos and you'll see. But my point is that the bottom half of my collection was made up of a bunch of games that I really like to play, but those were games that really weren't that valuable. They weren't really games that were really obscure or really rare or really hard to find. And they were games that I knew that I could easily get back in the future. Now, one of the comments that I typically get is from people who say, well, Y2K, why didn't you just ship it? You should have just shipped it. And to those people, I would say, first off, you don't really know how large a 1300 game collection is until you have to start putting it in boxes. And those were a lot of boxes, not counting the consoles, you know what I mean? And if I would have tried to ship my entire collection based on the current prices to ship items, because you got to remember, like, shipping and stuff like that, a lot of that gets affected by like the cost to do business, whether it be the cost of gas, you know, labor, whatever the case may be. And so just judging based off of what I had to pay to ship like the necessary items, like stuff for my children, my family, if I would have tried to ship my entire video game collection to the West Coast, it would have easily cost me $5,000 to $6,000. Now, again, the bulk of my collection, in terms of the value, was stored in probably about 350 to 400 games out of the entire $1,300 collection. And so the next question would have been, well, Y2K? Why didn't you just sell the commons and keep the really rare stuff? Well, there's a reason for that too. The reason why I didn't do that is because when you're selling to certain people, if you have a really large collection and you're trying to sell that collection in one shot, most people who are aware of what you would, of what they're getting, most people who are aware of what they're paying for, 9 times out of 10, are not going to buy a collection of commons. And if they do, they're not really going to pay you what you're looking for that collection. What they're probably going to do is they're probably going to pay you somewhere between 25 and 30% if you're selling them a large collection of common games. Now, that percentage goes up when you're included in that large number of games are some of the more rare or highly sought after items. And so I knew in order for me to get top dollar from my entire collection, I would have to sell the entire collection for it to make sense. Because to me, it didn't make sense to sell the, lower quadrant or, 900 games at 20%. It didn't make sense. I would rather sell the entire collection at a much higher percentage, um, even if it meant having to start from scratch, because I knew at the end of the day, a lot of that stuff I'd be able to get back. And as you can see, a lot of the heavy stuff I've been able to get back. Now, the surprising part is that I've been finding more things that weren't a part of my original collection than games that were a part of my original collection. So that's the funny part, but that could just be a result of just me being here on the West Coast. But that's why I sold it off all in one shot. Now again, people could say, well, you should have shipped it. You should have did this with it. You should have done that with it. And to those people, I would say, go online, go on whatever shipping company you have, go into your game room and just try to guesstimate how many boxes it would take for you to ship your games. And then call up a local shipping company and start start getting some prices for what it will cost. And you're going to quickly see why, not only from a pricing perspective, but from just a logistical perspective, that could be very difficult. Because now, on top of sorting out your life, you have an entire game collection to sort out. And that just would have taken up an entire room. And just with all of the transition, it just really wouldn't have made sense. So, for me, that was the best option. It was the best thing to do for me, just logistically. And now that we're here and we're actually getting settled in, now the opportunities are rolling in to get stuff back and get stuff in even better condition than we had it before. Because, like I said, this is like a very good condition, Game Boy Micro. So, And then thankfully, the network is still there, right? So there's plenty of people that I can network with, people who will be willing to kind of work with me to get some stuff. I did a deal with Easy Gamers the other weekend, so that was pretty cool. But I could tell you right now, there's a couple things that I am looking for. So if any of you guys who are either watching this live or if you watch this on the replay, there's a few games that I'm really looking for. One of them is Lords of Thunder, Blood Will Tell, Samurai Western, Pop Full Mail, Burning Rangers, um, Metal Warriors, and Hagane for sure. Those are some of the games that I've really like got my eye out for. So if any of you guys hear or see those games, or if any of you know someone who has those and are willing to part with them, let me know in the comments, and I will catch you. No, I'm good on Rule of Roses, so I'm not getting any of my horror games back. So I'm not going back, and I'm not getting any of the Silent Hills that I had back. I'm not getting none of those games. None of them back. I'm good on those games. I really just want my run and gun shooters, my shoot 'em ups, my beat 'em ups, the ones that I really like. Those ones are the ones that I'm going after. I still got to find a complete in box import Saturn for games like Hyperduel and original copies of Radiant Silvergun and Sonic Wings and Batsugan and a lot of that stuff. So definitely going to be looking for that. 90s handheld gamer, what's going on? Fire Emblem, no, I'm not looking for Fire Emblem. Um, will you get the Castlevania game? I gotta go. I didn't get a chance to go and look it up. I gotta go look it up and see if I could find it. But I did not get a chance to look at that. How many games would you say you have in your collection now, roughly? I'd probably say maybe about 70. Yeah, yeah, like roughly like 70 is probably where I'm at right now. I was actually just thinking a Game Boy Micro would be perfect to take on the go. Yeah, I think one of the best ways to take advantage of this is if you get those like 500 games in one cartridges and then just roll like that. That would actually be the perfect Doom 1 and 2. I was never really a big fan of Doom. I don't know. I was never really a big fan of Doom. But since we got folks in the chat here, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that video game values matter or don't matter? And if they do matter, who do they matter to? That's what I'm curious about. I'd love to get some feedback on that. Like, do the value of video games matter? Because I've heard RNG Gamer talk about how he's taken out like an insurance policy on his um video game collection, and how like how you can leverage the insurance policy that you have on your retro video games to take out loans and all kinds of other stuff. Or maybe I'm misquoting him. I don't know. You guys let me know. It only matters to the game who wants to play it. Um, Meaning like if you want to play the game, then the value matters to you. I'm trying to. What's that mean? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Drewski voice. Um, it doesn't matter. That's the question. Um, to me, I think it matters. I think value. I think value matters to people more than they're willing to admit it, because they don't want to seem like they're in it just for the money. Um, but I think it does matter to people. I think the value for sure matters to people. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he said something about that 90s handheld gamer. He said but he has RNG gamer has a really large game room, like he's got a really big game room. I think this a lot of this really is dependent on where you're at, like where you live, what you do, where you're at in life. Like all those things come into play when you look at things like that. You know, Retro Rick is gotta be like in his 40s. Chase after the right price, and those dudes, they're probably in their like 30s, mid to late 30s. The double mint guys, same thing. They're probably in their like mid to late 30s. Um, but none of them really, with the exception of maybe Chase, who is able to build a massive collection because he's buying everyone else's collection. None of them really have like crazy valuable collections like that. Well, then again, I shouldn't say that because I don't know what they have in their collection, but I know that if you've got like an entire collection of every single Pokemon video game, every Pokemon handheld, complete in box, mint, sealed stuff, I mean, you're talking about, the numbers start to get pretty wild, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, if you have $250,000, a $500,000 video game collection, that's significant. Like, that's nothing to sneeze at, you know what I mean? And that's going to matter to someone. My only fear with having that much physical product is like you could, like, God forbid your house catches on fire, it's over for you. Like it's over. It's over for you. Like, I don't care what you, and if unless you have an insurance policy for like a $500,000, or even worse, if you get robbed, you know what I mean? If you get robbed and somebody steals all that stuff, you're toast. Now, like I said, where you live where you live plays a big role in this. If you live somewhere in the middle of the country in a barn somewhere, okay, like, and you have like there's literal acres between you and your neighbor, that's different from a dude who's like in Brooklyn, in Bed-Stuy, in apartment, 3H. Like, that's different. Dude in apartment 3H has different issues from a dude like living in a barn somewhere in middle America, or a dude who's living somewhere in LA. Like, you know what I mean? If you live in Pomona, you have different issues than someone who lives like in the middle of the desert, where they can, have more room for their game room. Let me see. Let me catch up on this. Um, if you have, let's see, Loco Man, what's going on? I think value matters. Nothing is wrong with collecting things that hold their value. Why spend your hard-earned money on things that are essentially worthless? I agree. 90s handheld gamers said value does matter. That's why I won't trade away certain games that I don't play, because if I get rid of them, I want to get at least a good amount of the value back. I agree. How many people would play the game he's playing? I am for sure. Will never play bullet hell shooter. I love bullet hell shooters, man. Those are my favorite. Even I don't like rogue Metroidvania games. Can't stand random generating level. Have to die and level up. It's an insult to the gamer who wants to avoid dying. That is funny, but look, but it's funny. So right, so like you hate bullet hell shooters. I love bullet hell shooters, man. Like, I do. I've always have, like, ever since a kid, and I think it's probably because my older brother played a lot of bullet hell shooters and beat 'em ups. I grew up playing the Sega Genesis, which is home to some of the greatest shooters ever. You think about the Thunder Force series, Lightning Force, Glay Lancer, Streets of Rage, 1, 2, and 3, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutants in Manhattan. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, there's so many shoot 'em ups. I mean, Hellfire. I'm sure you guys know a lot of these. Mr. Baller says, I'm slowly starting a Pokemon game collection. I have just the Emerald Cart and Pokemon White CIB right now. I love those games when I was younger, and I believe they're great to have and will be worth more. Yeah, I mean, I'm not crazy about, see this, and then you talk about value, right? So let's talk about that. You could have a Pokemon game, complete in box, that's worth $500, $600. And because a lot of people know about Pokemon and Pokemon is super popular, then you're going to have a longer line of people trying to get that game than people lining up for a game like Hyperduel, which is also $500 to $600. But that is a Japanese import Sega Saturn game that majority of people don't know about, especially if they don't care about shoot 'em ups. I love Hyperduel. It might be in my top 10 favorite games of all time. And to me, Hyperduel is definitely worth $500 to $600 because it's an amazing shoot 'em up. I don't really think there's many better than it. But I guarantee you, if you put like like a complete in-box copy of Hyperduel and on a table next to a complete in-box copy of Pokemon Emerald, most people are going to take the Emerald because Emerald is more recognizable. It's it's where a lot of people are at, and it's just funny like that. Steve O Supremo, what's going on? I think value matters if you want the hobby to thrive. Take sports, Pokemon cards. They were dead in the water until people saw the value in them again. No, those are on fire. So I agree, right? So, and this is where the transient hobbyist comes in, right? Because you have people who are still going hard on retro, even in 2026, when the hype around retro has been dead for at least a year now. I mean, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the hype around retro video games died around the end of 2024. I think by the time the end of 2024 came, it was over. And in 2025, like people were just over it. I think Pokemon, was full front and center. And every single time I saw a line at a GameStop on a random Tuesday morning, it was people lining up for Pokemon cards. And Pokemon has been on fire and it's still on fire. Pokemon has not slowed down. It's completely taken over. So you have a lot of people who have left retro, all the transients have left retro video games. They've left it and they've moved on to other things. And you still have the people who are diehards who are still, collecting, who are still doing their thing. And during this time, what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of the folks who in behind the scenes in the background who are still building their collections, who are still adding stuff, who are still building, so that by the time, because everything is cyclical, people are going to come back to retro eventually. I don't think it's going to happen this decade, personally. I just don't. I don't, like, I heard someone say, I can't remember this guy's name, but he was like, oh, get ready. There's going to be a surge in retro. I don't see there being a surge in retro for a long time. Like, I don't think we're going to see another 2020 for a while. That's just me personally. I personally don't see that happening because there has to be a catalyst for something like that. The catalyst 5 years ago was everybody being on lockdown and people wanting things to do. The reason why Pokemon wasn't blowing up in 2020, I mean, I'm sure it was popular in 2020, but the reason why it wasn't attracting transients was because it didn't spark the same level of nostalgia that Mario 64 did. So, you know, everybody was getting in on the video. I remember going to a video game store back in 2020 and seeing a bunch of dudes in business suits. Like these guys just got off work from their like corporate jobs. You could tell because they still had on that super strong cologne. They were all like had their ties loosened. They all had their suit jackets on. And they walked into the store marveling at the fact that um, they had like a Nintendo. And they were all like, dude, we gotta get this. We gotta get this. Yeah. Yeah, they closed the office. We're gonna have to work remote, but this is gonna be great while I'm home. And that's really where the transients came in. So that was the catalyst. I don't really see another catalyst for that for a while. I think most people are over it. And when it does come back, when something like that does come back, people aren't gonna be running out to grab like NESs and like Super Nintendos. I think when it comes back, you'll probably see people running to go grab like PlayStation 2s and PlayStation 3s. That will be the nostalgia the next time around. They'll be like, oh, dude, I need to get a PlayStation 2. I need to get a PlayStation 3. Let's see. I think value matters since also trying to collect every Fire Emblem game that came out. Nice. Good luck, man. Hopefully you find them all. Even billionaires are into card collecting in my local market, except Pokemon as a payment. That's funny. That's funny. But see, so sports is different though. Like I cannot clump sports cards and sports collectibles in with To me, sports cards and comic books need to be separate from like Pokemon and video games and stuff. The reason why is because sports cards and comic books have been around way longer than video games and uh, Pokemon. Pokemon's only been around since like the 90s. You know what I mean? Sports cards have been around since, I mean, someone who's a sports card fanatic, let me know, but what, the 60s? The 40s? I mean, how old is the oldest sports card? So I feel like sports cards, sports memorabilia, and comic books, those, the real treasures, the real gems in that hobby are held by people in their 50s, 60s, that age group. Those are the guys who have the Michael Jordan rookie, you know, the the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the Mickey Mantle, the Barry Bonds, the Daryl Strawberries, the, Babe Ruth. Most kids don't even know who Babe Ruth is. They don't know about Babe Ruth. They don't know about Willie Mays. They don't really, I mean, unless they're really into the sport, they don't really know about those guys. You know what I'm saying? Even when it comes to basketball, most of the young generation, they don't really know like they don't. I mean, they might hear the names Oscar Robinson or Clyde Drexler or stuff when they're watching First Take or something, but they didn't grow up watching these guys, so they're not gonna have the same. A kid who's 16 is not gonna have the same connection to you know Bill Walton or Clyde Frazier as they would to like a LaMelo Ball or a John Morant. It's just a completely different time. So I'm saying all this to say that to me, the value in sports memorabilia and comic books, that stuff is transcended now. Like that stuff is like heirloom level now. Let me see. I agree, retro is dying down on the collecting side, and it's going to get even worse as the years go on, with the kids being born post 2005 to 10 not caring at all about retro. I mean they're going to care to the extent of how much money they can make on it. If they can't make any money on it, then they're definitely not going to care. What do you think about Nintendo new pricing? $10 cheaper for digital while physical getting it $10 more expensive? Um, so I heard something about that. So a lot of people have this theory that like all the new pricing around modern gaming is going to push people back towards retro. Um, I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like modern gaming, to me, modern gaming just makes my head hurt. I'm just gonna be honest. I think that's why I don't really engage with it that much. I don't know. Maybe I'm turning into an old man. I don't know. Like I just modern gaming just the Switch is probably where it stops for me. Um, I still don't really see the purpose of the Switch 2 right now. I just don't. For me, like it stops with the Switch. Anything past the Switch, I'm kind of like, you know. I even had a PS5. I had a 30th anniversary PlayStation 5, and I never opened it because I was just like, the thought of opening it and setting it up to me, just like, it made me tired just thinking about it. Like, bro, I don't even want to set this up right now. Like, I would look at my Sega Saturn and know I could just like put the Sega Saturn disc in and play it. And then I would look at the PlayStation 5 and know like I gotta boot it up. It's gonna go through system checks, it's gonna connect to the internet, it's gonna like bro, it was exhausting just thinking about like playing it. I don't know. Maybe it was just me, but I couldn't get into it. Joker is one assist away from a 2020. Oh, they're playing? Is Denver playing right now? I was just watching Minnesota and Houston, and then I stepped away to start this live. If they're playing right now, I'm about to go watch them. Who are they playing? Did they say if the full game would be in the cart for the extra 10? Yeah, that's what I'm wondering too. Like, I don't really know, because that's kind of like, I don't know. Now, 100% retro gaming is a lot simpler and just works. Oh, they're playing the Mavs. Are they winning? Because Denver, Denver looks shaky this season. I don't know. They might regret firing Mike Malone. Um, okay, cool. No, 100%. Value wise, I still think retro is worth more than modern game. Modern feels, um, he will probably won't get the last assist. I'll have to check that. Yeah, I mean, I think modern's gonna be around for a while. So, you'll be able to play modern and buy modern games. And I think, listen, I'm not hating on modern, bro. Like I can dig it. It's just for me personally, modern games. Look at all the blocks my kids leave. Look at the blocks. That's what I'm dealing with. I gotta clean this room up. But when it comes to modern, bro, like I can't I just don't have the energy for it right now. You know, um, the simplicity of retro, pop this cartridge in, get it going, fire it up, play some Castlevania, vanquish some demons, kill some bats. I just love it. Imagine GTA 6 came out for 100 and then wait 5 years and the price will drop. That is funny. Oh, that's the other thing about modern games. Prices ain't dropping. Them things ain't dropping. At least not for retail, unless it's a whack game. And that takes us back to the value piece, right? And I'm gonna wrap this live with this, right? I'm gonna wrap this live up with this. One of the things that I'm not doing with this second collection that I'm building is I am focusing on value, right? Because I selling my collection taught me a lot. Like when I sold my collection, it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about how not only resellers view your collection when they want to buy it, but it also taught me how other collectors view your collection when they want to buy it. And even just like regular everyday people on eBay. And what it taught me was that for the low dollar games that I just want to play, like for instance, let's say one day I wake up and I'm like, damn, I just want to play a little Grand Theft Auto 3, or maybe I just want to play, I don't know, what's a really common game? I don't know. Let's just say I want to play a really common game. I think I would rather emulate that than collect that. Um, I would rather emulate that than collect that because when you try to go and move a lot of common stuff, whether you try to move it in bulk or you try to move it individually, it's really hard to move. Really, really, really hard to move. That's why a lot of times when I see, and I'm again, I'm this is no hate, no shade. Collect whatever the hell you want to collect. I'm not saying what you should or shouldn't collect. I'm just talking about me and what I experienced when I sold my collection. When you have three bookcases of video games, and all of those games are great games, but they're super common games, it will be nearly impossible for you to move those relatively quickly unless you discount them a lot. And this doesn't matter if you sell it to a reseller or if you sell it on eBay, because I'm going to tell you why. Let's say you had two bookcases full of PlayStation 2 games that were all valued under $20. Even if you went with option A and said, okay, all right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sell all of these myself on eBay. Because there are so many copies of that game already listed on eBay, to sell that game at a relatively quickly, and by relatively quickly, I'll give you a month. To sell that game in a month, which is a long time to sell a game on eBay, but let's just give it a month. If you gave yourself a month to sell that game, you would have to drastically discount it from all the other games on eBay for you to even sell the game, let alone sell it within a month. So let's just take a game like Neo Contra for the PlayStation 2, which I actually like Neo Contra for the PlayStation 2. But that's what, that game is between what, like 12 and $15? If you had a complete in box copy of Neo Contra and you put it on eBay to sell it, The only way you're going to sell it is if you discount it by at least 25%. So let's say you discount it by 25%. Well, eBay's still going to get their 15% or 20% or whatever their percentage cut is, right? So you've already lost what, like 40%? So if you're selling the game for, let's just say, I don't know, 12 bucks, you got to drop it down to 9, and then eBay's going to take their, 150 or $2. So now you're down to what, 6, $7 for a game that you're going to sell for like what, 12, 13 bucks? For that, if you're thinking along that logic where you're like, well, damn, I'm already losing 40%, I might as well just sell it to a reseller for 60%. But here's the thing, a reseller is not going to buy that game at 60% of its value because they know that they're going to have the same challenge moving that game that you did. So now that 60% becomes 30%. And the reseller is really going to want to buy that Neo Contra for like $4. And if you're a person who's like, well, you know what? I don't care because it's only a $12 game and I don't really care about how much value I get back from a $12 game because it was only $12 and I'm okay with getting $4 of it because I got to enjoy it for X amount of years and I'll just look at that the $8 I'm losing as like the rental cost. Well, you could rationalize it that way and say that in your head, but now you have to take that same experience and multiply it by 500, right? So now you take, $4 times 500 means now you're only getting $2,000, whereas the value of everything is four times that, right? So that your 8,000 potential or whatever price charting is telling you that that lot goes for 8,000, 10,000. Well, now that goes down to 2,500. Now, on the flip side of that coin, let's say you spent more of your time collecting. Who is it that somebody put in the chat something about Rule of Rose? So let's say all of your games are Rule of Rose level games, or not even Rule of Rose level. We don't even have to go to that extreme. But let's just say, I don't know, what's like a mid-tier game for the PlayStation 2? I don't know. I don't know. Let's say Shadow Hearts or something. Or yeah, let's use Shadow Hearts as an example, or Mr. Mosquito, or something in that like 90, 80 to $90 range. Now you're commanding a completely different price regardless of which market you're going to. If you have a game that's not very common on eBay, you can demand something closer to the full price and not have to take as much of a hit when it comes to the percentage. Or if you do sell it to a reseller, now you can command, and I know this because I've done it, you can command higher prices. Like if I take a complete unboxed copy of Demon Crest to a reseller, he's not even gonna be stupid enough to try to tell me, yeah, 60% for Demon Crest. He's just, at least not me. I don't know. I can't speak for everybody, but I know me. If I'm taking a minty complete unboxed copy of Demon Crest to someone, they're gonna know, like, okay, well, I can't offer this guy 40% for that or 50%. They know that the kind of the starting point for negotiating is going to be somewhere closer to like 57% and then up, right? So 57 to 65 to 70, 80 if you can push it that high. So that's a big part of the reason why this time around, the games that I want to play that are low dollar, I will probably emulate, but the games that I'm going to collect will probably be high dollar games just because if I do decide to exit again, I want my exit to be a lot cleaner and smoother than my last one. Not to say that I didn't have a good exit the first time. Like it was very easy. It was fairly smooth and I felt like I was very satisfied with what I got from my entire collection. Um, but I think I could do better this time around. So in that regard, value matters. Let me reach out. Let me read some of these comments here. I just got a PSVR 1 from a collection buy. Hooking that thing up was a science project. That's modern gaming. A bunch of hoops I have to go through before I can even start the game. I mean, there you go, man. Like, that's what I'm saying. You know, that's what I'm saying, bro. And yeah, listen, like I said, no shade to modern games. I think modern games are cool. I like modern games. It's just, it gives me a headache. And um, I don't know. I don't feel like the experience is the same. Like, I was looking at what console was I looking at the other day? I think I was looking at a Turbo Duo the other day, because I'm probably gonna start getting into stuff like that this time around. Like, I'm looking at Turbo Duos. I'm looking at like a Turbo Express. I'm looking at like a Jaguar. I'm looking at what it would take to get like a complete set for the um, Neo Geo CD. Like, I'm looking at those types of things this time around, just because I feel like those items are gonna have like a different place. They're gonna like, in a few years, those items will be viewed a little bit differently. So I don't know. We'll see. When it comes to Nintendo, though, um, for me, the buck kind of stops at the Super Nintendo right now. I don't really think I'm gonna be doing any GameCube this time around. I have a few GameCube games, but I'm probably gonna either sell them or put them up for trade bait, because I don't really care for the GameCube like that. Right now, a lot of what I'm looking at is very cartridge based, so really heavy on the fourth gen, really, really heavy on the fourth gen and the third gen. And then if I do fifth gen, it'll probably just be Sega Saturn and PlayStation 1. I'm gonna skip the N64. I don't really need anything out of that library. But when it comes to the PlayStation 1, there's definitely some bangers that I gotta get back in my wheelhouse. And then and when it comes to sixth gen, I will be doing Xbox, original Xbox. There's a couple, not a lot. I don't need the whole library, but there are a few original Xbox games that I need to get. Um, and PlayStation 2 for sure. Like, I have like 5 games on my hit list: Blood Will Tell, Samurai Western, Futurama, um, God Hand, and what was the other one? There's one more that I can't remember because it's getting foggy now. But Sega CD and Sega Saturn for sure, both North American Sega Saturn and Japanese Sega Saturn. Gunning for those. It's just those are really hard to find right now, like super hard to find. So, but we'll see. But listen, yeah, this live went way longer than I anticipated it going. Didn't mean for it to go this long. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate the discussion. Thank you all for your feedback, and I'll catch you in the next one. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.